12 o'clock. This old world's gonna reel and rock. Pharaoh's army got drowned. Oh, Mary, don't you weep.
Good evening. I'm Sue Ebbers. I'm delighted to welcome you all to United Theological Seminary, where I have the privilege of serving as dean. United Theological Seminary is an ecumenical graduate school of theology affiliated with the United Church of Christ. Our mission is to prepare women and men for effective ordained and lay leadership in church and society. Our commitment to high-quality theological education is paired with equally strong commitment to inclusivity, justice, spirituality, and the arts. You will see those commitments uniquely blended this evening. Over the past 50 years, this seminary has offered a progressive voice in and for the church and the world. This evening's Acts of Protest, Changing the World Through Art, is one of a number of events through which we will be celebrating our 50th anniversary. Those events will take place over the next year, and we hope you will join us for as many of them as possible. If this is your first visit to United, we invite you right now while I'm talking to fill out the information card on your chair and leave it in the basket back there on the bench of the processional aisle, so that we can notify you about future events and programs. And for those of you already on our mailing list who receive information by regular mail, we are trying to go green whenever we can, so please make sure we have an up-to-date email address for you so that we can notify you that way. That will help us to meet our eco-justice commitments. And now it's my very great pleasure to call upon Steve Newcomb, director of our newest justice initiative, the Center for Public Ministry, established to work toward better equipping leaders for social justice ministries. Steve will begin the introductions of the wonderful artists who have gathered to help us celebrate the last 5 decades. Thank you.
Good evening. It's my distinct pleasure to add my welcome to each of you. I'm delighted that the Center could be involved and co-host this event. The Center was launched just 1 year ago with a, well, I won't say simple, but at least a straightforward mission to advance the art and practice of social justice ministry. The Center is United's most recent expression of its lifelong commitment to social justice, a commitment we have gathered this evening to celebrate. And to lead us in that celebration is UTS alum, artist, and activist Leslie Ball. Leslie has performed on stages across the country, from the Guthrie Theater to Carnegie Hall, to a USO tour entertaining the troops stationed in Panama and the Caribbean. In 1991, Leslie returned to Minneapolis and launched Ball's Cabaret, an experimental stage for performers of any discipline or level of experience. Ball's is currently celebrating its 20th anniversary. It's the longest running weekly midnight cabaret in history. Yeah. And was featured in the New York Times as a must-see in the Twin Cities. Leslie was honored with the Hawkins Peace and Justice Award for her work as an artist and an activist. She was also the recipient of a number of Minnesota Music Academy Awards, including Best Female Songwriter. Her next project is appearing as the long-suffering mother of the Hardy Boys in the holiday comedy, The Hardy Boys Save Christmas. Opening like most commercial establishments, Thanksgiving weekend at the Bryant Lake Bowl Theater. Leslie earned her Master in Fine Arts at New York University and her Master's of Divinity degree here at United Theological Seminary. Join me in welcoming the talented, creative, fabulous, must-see Leslie Ball.
Theological Seminary before. This is your first time out here. Now, all those other folks are important folks, but you newcomers are especially dear, and we're so happy that you're here in this. This is proof of United's commitment and your understanding of the intersection between arts and spiritual formation. It's right here, embodied, and we are. A couple things. Well, just briefly, let me tell you just a little bit about why I came to UTS. I was looking for a progressive voice in the religious community. I was hoping for a place that respected the arts and understood the intersection of arts and spirituality. I was looking for a place dedicated to social justice. So it had to be here. This is a place that has been a pioneer for so long around equal rights and arts-infused curriculum. We are so, so blessed to have this little secret in our community, and we need to get the word out. Get the word out to the world. UTS is here as a shining beacon. So those of you here for the first time, I encourage you to make contact and think about, just take one class, just one class. That's all it takes. And you'll be hooked. I was wondering if we would see the moon through any of the windows. Is anyone spotted that side? It's probably risky to ask us to howl at the moon together. Maybe later, to get you warmed up. I want to talk a little bit, okay. Yes, sir, thank you. We're going to start off with Clyde Steckel, the Emeritus Professor of Theology here at United. In addition to teaching pastoral theology, he was also for many years the dean. He would often say that his goal for United is that this be a school that was inclusive, integrative, and intentional. Countless students have benefited from Clyde's wisdom and intelligence. He's known for empowering students, being a dedicated teacher, and a beloved part of this community. Will you please welcome Clyde Steckel?
What were they thinking then, and what would they think now? I asked those questions of the founders of United in my September 22nd convocation address. For this occasion tonight, Cindy Beth suggested I might read the last paragraph from that address and then add brief comments. Here is what I said then. The founders would be immensely proud that United has been in the forefront of schools, challenging racism and sexism, and opening doors for persons of LGBT orientation, persons with disabilities, Native Americans, older second career students, and persons in recovery from chemical dependency. The founders would recognize the institutional costs of such prophetic witness in a society moving to the far right politically and religiously. But they would encourage us to stay that course, one they could not have foreseen in detail, but a faithful path for followers of Jesus Christ. And now these comments. Courage in the struggle for justice and peace is a phrase from the United Church of Christ Statement of Faith. Courage is finally not measured by bold pronouncements, but by words spoken and actions taken day after day, often out of sight. A dean, for example, refuses to send a student for a field placement to a church that wanted men only. A professor defends United against accusations from a distinguished professor at a prestigious university, divinity school there, while they are attending a scholarly conference together. The trouble with United, he said, is that you've gone overboard on feminism and homosexuality. That will scare away the brightest and best young men. Well, the United professor replies, that might not be all bad. And a trustee, another example, and a trustee appeals to a millionaire for major endowment gift, and he replies, I won't give a dime to United until you pull back from your extreme positions. And so a dime is lost. But fidelity and integrity are saved. That is how the fabric of courage is woven, day after day. Another precious phrase from that same UCC Statement of Faith speaks about the cost and joy of discipleship. We need to count the costs, of course, but we should never forget the joy. I wish you all a joyful evening tonight. Thank you.
So any millionaires in the room who want to donate a dime or more, be inspired by that story. Coming to United, you would expect to have classmates who are United Church of Christ or Presbyterian or United Methodist. And I was so delighted to also have classmates who are Muslim and Jewish and pagan and even Unitarian. And it's a long, long list, and that is because United has always been so respectful of interfaith relationships, or what theologian Harvey Cox talks about, lowering the walls between various faith traditions. And this is such a remarkable community for that reason, and inspired this song. The word namaste in Sanskrit means the divine in me recognizes the divine in you. Dearly beloved, we gather together to remind one another God is here. Here in this moment, here in this place, in the geese overhead, in each human face. The God in me sees the God in you. Here today, the God in me sees the God in you. Namaste, namaste, namaste. Dearly beloved, let us remember to take care of each other, take care of ourselves. Help us to honor these gifts that God gives, all of creation, these lives that we live. The God in me sees the God in you. Here today, the God in me sees the God in you. Namaste, namaste, namaste. God is calling us out of our history, singing us into our future. Let us open our hearts to the mystery and surrender. Dearly beloved, we gather together to remind one another God is here. Here in this moment, here in this place, in the air that we breathe, in each creature's face. The God in me sees the God in you. Here today, the God in me sees the God in you. Namaste, namaste, namaste. Thanks so much. And I want to introduce some of the artists that were here for the art exhibit. Now, some folks had to be out of town, and so they may not be with us. And I know that John August Swanson is not available. He's away, but he loaned his works that are part of Luther Seminary's collection is on loan to us for this exhibit. And in addition to that, I don't think Harriet Bart was able to make it, or Anna Metcalf. I'm wondering, is Takumba here? He might be coming later. And Shaka Mkali, yay, welcome. So, in addition to Shaka M. Kali, I also want to see, would you all stand, please? Laura Crosby, Diana Eicher, Camille Gage, and Karen Searle would all, yay! And back there, will you stand up, Amanda, please? Amanda Hunter, UTS alum, amazing artist, and the curator of this entire exhibit. So let's hear it for Amanda. And now I have the privilege of introducing Pamela Cook. Pamela is a research associate for the Center for Public Ministry. She's currently working on her MDiv here at UTS, of course, with a concentration in leadership toward racial justice. Prior to being here at United, she graduated from Emory University School of Law and taught at Luther College. And she is such a Renaissance woman. She still is a practicing lawyer and an instructor at Luther and pursuing her MDiv here. And thank you so much for being with us. Will you please welcome Pamela Cook.
In furtherance of the truth, I am not still teaching at Luther or practicing. Actually, I never practiced, but I am a member of the bar. I still have to pay hundreds of dollars each year to maintain that membership. Founded in the cauldron of the 1960s, United's birth was welcomed by a society that was waiting for bold, social justice-oriented ministry. The chants of freedom now in the South could be heard around the world, and United was no exception. In January 1966, 4 years after the seminary's first day of class, Midler students at United spent a week in the small towns of Mississippi, canvassing for voter registration among the Black people there who had been afforded the opportunity for visiting in their homes. The most impressive aspect of the week for most of them was the widespread fear and apprehension of the African Americans, their fear of white retaliation for exercising their citizenship rights. Freedom now! Freedom now! Wilson Yates, at that time professor of church and community, was instrumental in raising the consciousness of students and faculty to the problems of white racism. Out of his experience as a Southerner from Missouri and participant in the civil rights movement in the 60s, he introduced a racism seminar to the curriculum. He had been the first white student jailed in the Nashville sit-ins in 1960. The Twin Cities, however, was not the South. Only 10% of the population was Black, and manifestations of racism were often subtle. The issue of racism needed to be faced by the white community. In the fall of 1971, Yates introduced a white racism workshop into the first-year program, incorporating it into the Christianity and Culture course. In these workshops, there was an intensive program of raising the awareness of the students to white racism. To achieve this goal, he used the program developed by James Tillman, and the Tillmans were active participants in the program. Freedom now! Freedom now! By 1974, Yates was convinced that this awareness of white racism needed to be made available on a wider basis. On December 11th of that year, he presented a funding proposal to the Bertha and Archer Walker Foundation of Minneapolis. The Walkers were members of Hennepin Avenue United Methodist Church and shared the concern for racism in the wider church. With that funding, Yates was able to develop resources for a church and race program. Not only were bibliographical resources identified, but a kit was produced for use in groups and congregations to raise their awareness of white racism. This civil rights legacy lives on in United's certificate and master's concentration in leadership toward racial justice, and in its graduates, including Herbert Perkins, class of 2010, who, along with Marjorie Otto, teach the core class of the Leadership Toward Racial Justice concentration. Whether it is at the Minnesota State Capitol protesting racial inequity in educational achievement, or whether it is in forests and lakes in solidarity with Dakota and Ojibwe fishing and hunting rights, or whether it is part of the 99% at Occupy Minneapolis, or whether it is protest at a local radio and TV station that it played a racist song about Hmong people, or whether it is last year's student government president, Luke Stevens Royer, challenging the student body to make anti-racism education for students and faculty a priority this year. The legacy of civil rights lives on here at United, and current students are still chanting, "Freedom now, freedom now, freedom now, freedom now, freedom now, freedom now."
Thank you, Pamela. The Reverend Denise Dunbar Perkins. Pamela mentioned Herb Perkins, and Herb's here somewhere. There, hi, yay. You might have guessed that they're connected. Denise and Herb, madly in love for a long time now. Denise, a graduate of UTS, graduated in 2004, and she is a ordained minister with the Presbyterian Church, but she is actually a historic figure because she's the first African-American woman to be ordained in the Presbyterian Church in the state of Minnesota, here in our midst. She's a board-certified staff chaplain at Abbott Northwestern Hospital. She specializes in oncology and the spiritual challenges that result from chronic illness, and I actually had the privilege of witnessing Denise in action when another UTS grad was a patient there, Dean J. Seal, who's right over there with his son, who recovered beautifully, partly because of the ministry of Denise Dunbar Perkins. But it was an honor to witness that ministry, and tonight we get to witness your arts ministry. So please welcome to the stage Denise Dunbar Perkins.
So, it's Friday. So you heard Pam talk about the history of UTS and the 60s and what it really meant to be part of that action, to people who went down there. They were young people. Wilson, you were young. younger. And it was it was very frightening to be in there. The students who came down were putting their lives in their hands, and the people who were deciding to try to vote, they were putting their lives in their hands. And so they had to have some inspiration. Think about it. They met in these quiet places off the way, in basements and back rooms so that they could organize themselves. And so they had to remember why they were doing what they were doing. So you may hear somebody stand up just in the middle of this, and they will say something like, I am determined to walk in freedom. Yes, I am. I am determined to walk in freedom. Yes, I am. Through all trials, tribulations, persecutions, I am determined to walk in freedom. Yes, I am. I am determined to live in dignity. Yes, I am. I am determined to live with dignity. Yes, I am. Through all trials, tribulations, persecutions, I am determined to live with dignity. Yes, I am. They would say, I am determined to cast my vote today. Yes, I am. I am determined to cast my vote today. Yes, I am. Through all trials, tribulations, persecutions, I am determined to cast my vote today. Yes, I am. I am determined to walk in freedom. Yes, I am. I am determined to walk in freedom. Yes, I am. Through all trials, tribulations, persecution, I am determined to walk in freedom. Yes, I am. I am determined to walk in freedom. Yes, I am. Thank you. Now it's your turn. Okay. We are going to sing a song, and this is the times when they be in the church on a Friday night, just like we're in church on a Friday night. And you would have to remember how determined you are and all the people that you were fighting, all the people trying to keep you from being who you are. And the demonstrations they had to go in, and the hoses that were pushed at them, and the dogs that were, released on them and being dragged away to jail, no matter if you were a little girl or an old man. And so they had to be very, very determined to do what they were going to do. And so I'm going to ask you, I'm going to sing it once through, and then it's called a call and response. And so I want you to respond. So I'm going to start it off, and I want you to hear it, okay? Oh. let nobody turn me round, turn me round, turn me round. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, walking in freedom land, okay? I don't wanna let nobody turn me round, turn me round, turn me round. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, talking in freedom. Ain't gonna let racism, ain't gonna let racism turn me round, turn me round, turn me round. Ain't gonna let racism turn me round. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, talking injustice. Oh, gonna let injustice turn me round, turn me round, turn me round. I'm gonna let injustice turn me round. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, talking. And I want to see your hands. Ain't gonna let nobody, gonna let nobody turn me round, turn me round, turn me round. But ain't gonna let nobody turn me round. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, talking on freedom's land. Amen. Hallelujah. Woo! We had church. Thank you. Thank you.
Doug Federhart is here. So Denise, you graduated in 2004, and 20 years before that, Doug graduated. You little puppy. Doug, a graduate from 1984, spiritual director. He works as a teacher and spiritual director at Sacred Ground Center for Spirituality, and he's the director of congregational life at White Bear Unitarian Universalist. And for many years, he was the deputy director at Outfront, Minnesota. And Doug lives in South Minneapolis with his beloved Stuart Hall, and Stuart and I toured in a theater production of Free to Be You and Me in 1970. It's all right to cry. So you know what a healthy relationship they have, because Stuart was marinated in Free to Be You and Me. Please welcome Doug Federhart.
Thank you, Leslie, and what a wonderful honor it is to be here. This space in which we are meeting and sitting and enjoying music and words tonight was not here. This was a big open area, and a couple friends of mine, actually, one of my seminary friends, she and her partner had a ceremony of commitment right, probably almost just about on where we are outside at that time in the Grove. So that was a few years ago. Let me just say a couple things. Some of the remarks I'm making refer to history that is recounted in Art Merrill's book, but as I look around tonight, I realize eyewitnesses to that history are right here. So I'm a little nervous because I sure hope Art was accurate, because I'm repeating some of his stuff. But also, I just want to quote our dear St. Mark, as Jim Nelson often says, St. Mark Twain, that is. And Mark Twain said to his audiences, if you finish listening before I finish speaking, I would just ask that you sit quietly. So good luck. I tried to find ways to shorten this, and there just wasn't a way to do it. So bear with me. So we start. Philosophy, or culture, raises the existential questions, and theology formulates the answers. This statement, although a gross oversimplification, summarizes the essence of Paul Tillich's theory method of correlation, which came out with his systematic theology way back in 1951. So whatever thoughts or feelings you might have about the work of this great Protestant theologian, his method of correlation had a major impact on United Seminary. It figured in the design of what became known in 1967 as the new curriculum. But then it proceeded to disrupt the equilibrium of life in our beloved institution as the various issues of contemporary culture came barging in through the doors and windows. Culture intruded right from the beginning, and theology, as it was developing in United's unique pastoral setting out here, was doing its best to formulate appropriate answers, too quickly for some and far too slow for others. Still a tension that probably goes on today. As we're hearing this evening, this tension has shown up in significant ways many times in United's history, but it became especially evident during the 1970s, along with the issues of addressing racism and white racism and working to undo racism that started early on. Another thing that came in the door and was dropped in our laps from culture was the issue of homosexuality and gay liberation. The watershed moment called the Stonewall Riots happened in New York City's Greenwich Village in 1969 in the summer. In that rebellion, queers of all sorts took to the streets and fought back against not only law enforcement, but against centuries of oppression and even demonization. The church was one of the guiltiest parties in that social construct. Out of those nights of protest grew a surprising and major liberation movement that spread rapidly throughout major urban centers all across the country. I lived in Lincoln, Nebraska at that time and got active in the very early 70s, about 1970, with the campus group, the Gay Action Group in Lincoln, Nebraska. So that was a long time ago, 1969 and 70. So what we found is we were sick and tired of being called sick and tired. And we were sick and tired of the pejoratives and the demeaning language. In what seemed like an instant in terms of history's timelines, we moved from the shadowed world of ashamed and fearful faggots and bull dykes and ridiculed drag queens to becoming out and proud gay men, lesbian women, bisexual and transgendered human beings whose sexuality or gender identity was only one aspect of our humanity. Granted, I've compressed that timeline a little bit here, but it's a long timeline otherwise. It was our beloved teacher and friend, James Nelson, professor of Christian ethics from 1963 to as recently as 95, and he still is here often. He was the first, perhaps, to address the issue head-on and call on theology for answers. His early paper, Homosexuality in the Church, presented for faculty discussion in the early 70s, generated intense conversation. And while the faculty's understanding of the issues varied from person to person and those positions differed, Jim recalls what he says is the discussions were not rancorous, so people were listening to each other with respect. He also praises the leadership of Louis Gunneman, who relied on consensus process to arrive at statements rather than use a straight, forgive me, up-down vote, which could create division instead of unity. That paper of Jim's appeared in published form first in 1975 in UTS's own publication, Theological Markings, and that paper eventually became a chapter in Jim's well-known book, Embodiment and an Approach to Sexuality and Christian Theology. And that book and knowledge of Jim, by the way, is what got me to United Seminary in 1981. Yet, as Art Merrill wrote in his book, United Theological Seminary of the Twin Cities, an Ecumenical Venture, which is an accounting of United's history, Art said the issue could not remain intellectual. By 1977, at least 3 students were out on campus, 2 because of breaches of confidentiality made by someone else, but one, most notably Sue Ebers, by her own courageous revelation. Those students called on faculty right then in 1977 to address United's admission policy in regard to gay and lesbian students. And so at the preschool faculty workshop, which happened every September, the discussion was on the agenda, moderated by Jim Nelson. The first formal action was a vote to call for the creation of a task force. Does this sound familiar? Which would recommend to the Faculty Senate a range of positions that United could take, and again, this is a quote, in relation to those avowed and unavowed of homosexual preference. Ah, the language, don't you love it? The task force was to bring back recommendations to the Senate in November of that very year. Well, by the end of that September meeting in the faculty workshop, they did craft an inclusive equal opportunity statement, which was subsequently distributed in a letter to students, faculty, and administration. But the task force process, as so often happens with such groups, moved slowly, too slowly for some, and a difficult confrontational moment arrived in December of that year when no one had yet seen any recommendations come out of the task force, and a new group identifying itself as the Gay Caucus emerged, criticizing the so far passive stance of the task force and expressing impatience with the lugubrious movement. Finally, in April of 1978, the task force presented its recommendations to that Senate, and Sue Ebbers was among those Gay Caucus members who picketed outside the doors where that meeting was being held, holding signs that communicated on behalf of the caucus their feelings of anger and disappointment over what was being brought forward. It seemed nowhere near strong enough. It seemed not to go far enough. The tactics of the street had come inside. Merrill recalls it as, and this is a quote from the book again, the most confrontive action that the seminary had experienced through those turbulent years. Culture had brought the issue squarely into our midst, and theology could not respond fast enough. But the irony is evident. From standing outside those doors in 1977, Sue Ebbers now, by both appointment and acclaim, legitimately occupies the dean's office. So I think we have an Occupy United movement going on. And in addition, several of our very respected and current faculty members are openly out about their lesbian or gay identity, and they are widely respected not only here but across the nation. My adolescent view of history was that it's a solid thing, comprised of dates and deeds of dead people and inarguable facts. Now I know that history is in fact fragile. It's ethereal and dependent on memory and point of view and on who has the power to promote or perpetuate their view. Perpetuate, sorry. I think maybe I do mean perpetrate. People's stories are told, and they are often disregarded or forgotten. When I entered UTS as a first-year Master of Divinity student there in 1981, I felt a great sense of caution around how openly I would share my gay identity with others. Granted, Jim Nelson was my very supportive advisor, and I had certainly been out in the admissions process, and I was a recipient of a full Dayton scholarship in those years. It was an amazing thing. I couldn't have been here otherwise. But I thought, what about the other students or the faculty or administration as a whole? How would that go? So I began in a semi-closeted state here, which surprised me, especially after I'd been very out and very public for over a decade in community activism and organizing work in Nebraska and Iowa. I may have heard when I arrived a vague reference to something about a gay caucus, but it had existed a few years prior to my arrival. Now I realize not much more than 3 or 4 years before I got here. And there was little evidence of it still there in 1981. This is how history is fragile. Students graduate, and sadly, stories get forgotten. The legacy of great risk and deep work too often fades or dies. Well, after nearly a full semester of living the way I was living, semi-closeted, I couldn't tolerate the emotional and psychological disconnect. And as my final project in Bob Bryant's elective class on liberation theology, I used poetry and personal story to come out and tie the themes of what we'd been studying directly into real life. I was using, apparently, the method of correlation with no conscious awareness of it, although maybe Don White's class, where he so carefully outlined all of Tillich's concepts on the board, maybe I had absorbed that without really knowing it. But today I can be counted among the many numbers of out-ordained clergy following the precedent set by the United Church of Christ back in 1972, when Bill Johnson became the first out gay person to be ordained in what I believe is the history of the Christian church. Not the first gay person to be in ordained ministry, however, the first out gay person. So anyway, so this evening, this is a time for remembering, which is what we're doing. It's a time for honoring. I remember those who've gone before us, making this place what it is. I honor the honest and hard struggles of so many whose presence here has been part of shaping this institution. Remember, we have been here, we are here, and we will be here.
Thank you, Doug. Neil Hagberg, so talented and funny. I want to share with you an email. I was asking Neil if he had any time constraints for this evening, because he is one of the most working guys in showbiz. And I wondered if he needed to leave early. And he said, no time constraints, but I will need to go to bed early because A, I am old now. And B, I'm leading an all-day workshop the next day, so he can't be out too late. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about that workshop. Is it sold out? I have no idea. You have no idea? Okay, because it sounds so amazing. Really? That's so great. Okay. That's the scoop, y'all, because online it says limited numbers, so the fact that you're here tonight. Plymouth Congregational Church over on Franklin and Nicollet. It's from 9 a.m. to 3:30. And the name of the workshop is It's Not As Simple As It Seems. And it's a workshop on music and ethics, using music to start a dialogue around our deepest fears and prejudices. Neil, you need to be a student here at UTS. Just FYI. I also asked him how I should introduce him, and he said, you can introduce me as the less beautiful half of the duo Neil and Leandra. That we've toured the U.S. the past 20 years and are coming out with our 14th recording this winter. And he also does these solo workshops. It's such a pleasure to have you here, Neil Hagberg. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, and now, hang on a second. Now I'm supposed to lead you in a song that I don't know. So when Leslie said, "Hey, would you lead him this song?" Oh, no, I figured it out, I think. And the good thing is, you don't have the words, do you? No, we're gonna call them out. Oh, we're gonna call them out. Okay, we're gonna call out. Okay, good. I thought that I could just make them up because they don't know that I don't know it. So this is a Holly Near song, and I went to YouTube and saw Holly Near performing it, and then I said, well, even I could learn this. So how are we going to do this? We just, okay. Sure, you can do, let's see. So is it first? We are a gentle, angry people, and we are singing for our lives. We are a gentle, angry people, and we are singing for our lives. What's the next one? A justice-loving. We are a justice-loving people, and we are singing for our lives. We are a justice-loving people, and we are singing for our lives. We're all in this together. We are all in this together, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are all in this together. We are singing, singing for our lives. Let's do that one more time. All in, gentle, no. We are a gentle, angry people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a gentle, angry people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. All right. So I am very glad that you came up and sang because I was singing the wrong melody. So the good thing was she did it, and you guys didn't even know it. There you have it. Well, Leandra and I, who have done concerts together for 20-some years, have gotten known for our love songs. And Old Love, if you listen to the morning show with Tom or Jim Edpool and Dale Connolly and stuff, and we could not get away from that. No matter how we tried, you know, on the same CD is Old Love was a song I wrote called The Way We Killed Our Love. And it is just as true, but nobody wants to hear that. So we got stuck. When we didn't get stuck, we just sing whatever we want, and then we got known for love songs. And I just thought tonight this would be well, you know, as long as I'm there, let's sing a love song. So. When we first met, stars fell from the skies, scales fell from my eyes. It was like a baby being born. Until then, I believed I would live my life alone. My heart would be a stone where no new life could be formed. But it was plain and true. You loved me, and I loved you. In this life, what more can we ask than to find someone who will see behind the mask and say, I love you. We lived our lives and knew that there was something more to this. We had a couple kids, the place turned into one revolving door. We go to church, they go to school, we're not alone. Our house became a home with love at its core. And it is plain and true. You love me, and I love you. In this life, what more can we ask than to find someone who will see behind the mask and say, I love you. And the first time that our son came home with friends tagging along and said, here's my mom and here's my other mom, I believed again that everything was gonna be alright, like the first time that you kissed me goodnight. And it is plain and true. You love me, and I love you. In this life, what more can we ask than to find someone who will see behind the mask and say, I love you. I love
to our last pair of performers, and I guarantee you, you're going to be filled with mirth. They are both so delightful, so funny. Even the person that introduces them is funny. But first, we're going to be just a little serious. And with the ukulele, we're going to be serious. Yes, we are. Because United Theological Seminary taught me about both and versus either or. A ukulele can be whimsical and serious. And I'm going to just confess that I have never performed with a ukulele before, so this is a big gulp. It is Veterans Day, 11/11/11. Veterans Day, and we would be remiss not to address Veterans Day. And both and, again, UTS is a place that teaches nonviolence and anti-war curriculum and also supports and nurtures veterans coming back. In fact, one of the national experts on working with returning veterans is a UTS grad. Is Amy Blumenschein here tonight? She's at... See? She walks the walk. And so, Veterans Day, which when I was growing up, brought to mind older generations, Arthur Godfrey, ukulele. But when I was growing up, it was my parents' generation, their parents' generation. My grandfather served in World War I in Europe, and my father served in World War II in the Pacific. He actually was awarded a Purple Heart. And so every year on Veterans Day, I would call him up and thank him for his service. And this is the first year I'm not able to do that. My dad died on Easter morning. And so I've been thinking about him today, and I wanted to do a couple songs about Veterans Day and just got this idea a few hours ago, so bear with me. But I think we need to sing about all veterans of all ages, and I found these two songs, thought of these two songs by different writers, different protagonists, but both of them are 21, and so I thought these songs should be paired. So this first song is by Tom Waits. I got your letter today, and I miss you all so much here. I can't wait to see you all, and I'm counting the days here. I still believe that there's gold at the end of the world, and I'll come home to Illinois on the day after tomorrow. It is so hard, and it's cold here, and I'm tired of taking orders. And I miss old Rockford town up on the Wisconsin border. What I miss, you won't believe, shoveling snow and raking leaves. And my plane will touch down on the day after tomorrow. I close my eyes every night, and I dream that I can hold you. They fill us full of lies everyone buys about what it means to be a soldier. I still don't know how I'm supposed to feel about all the blood that's been spilled. Will God on his throne welcome me home, get me home the day after tomorrow? You can't deny the other side. Don't want to die any more than we do. What I'm trying to say is, don't they pray to the same God that we do? Tell me, how does God choose? Whose prayers does God refuse? Who turns the wheel? Who throws the dice? The day after tomorrow. I'm not fighting for justice. I'm not fighting for freedom. I am fighting for my life and another day in this world here. I just do what I've been told. We're all just gravel on this road. And only the lucky ones come home the day after tomorrow. And I'll be 21 today. And I've been saving all my pay. And my plane will touch down on the day after tomorrow. My plane, it will touch down on the day after tomorrow. Tom Waits. And I thought we needed to hear this voice. This is from Steve Goodman, written in the 70s, sadly still very relevant. Oh, my name is Penny Evans, and my age is 21. A young widow in the war that's being fought in Vietnam. And I have 2 infant daughters, and I do the best I can. And now they say the war is over, but I think it's just begun. I remember I was 17 on the day I met young Bill. At his father's grand piano, we played good old Heart and Soul. And I only knew the left-hand part, and he the right so well. And he's the only boy I slept with, and the only one I will. It was first we had a baby girl, and then we had 2 good years. And it's next the 1A notice came, and we parted without tears. Then it's 9 months from our last good night, our second babe appears. And then it's 10 months and a telegram confirming all our fears. And now every month I get a check from an army bureaucrat. And it's every month I tear it up and I mail the damn thing back. Do you think that makes it all right? Do you think I'd fall for that? Well, you can keep your bloody money. Sure won't bring my Billy back. I never cared for politics, speeches I don't understand. I never took no charity from any living man. But tonight there's 50,000 gone in that unhappy land. And there are 50,000 heart and souls being played with just one hand. And my name is Penny Evans, and I've just turned 21. A young widow in the war that's being fought in Vietnam. And I have 2 infant daughters, and I thank God I have no sons. And now they say the war is over, but I think it's just begun. Steve Goodman, by his material, he's an American treasure. And now, some fun. We have these 2 amazing performers as dessert, and we have a wonderful person who's going to introduce them, Mary Bednarowski. Did I forget something, Cindy Beth? I know, she's going to speak before Kevin and Simone. Mary B., you know, I started in 2004 as a student here, and Mary B. was no longer teaching here at that point, and I kept hearing, oh, Mary Bednar, you missed Mary B. Oh, Mary B. And when I finally got to meet this person, I thought, with all these stories I'd heard, that, you know, I'd probably be a little disappointed. And in fact, she surpasses her reputation. It is so much fun to sit in a meeting with Mary B. where there can be just dire news on the table, and Mary B. makes the greatest joke that gives us all faith and hope. She's remarkable, and she's a professor emeritus here. She's one of the pioneers in women's studies. She's published. Her books are beyond just the UTS walls. Her books and her teaching is respected across the country. And I know there's all these other things I should be saying about you, Mary B., but I'm looking at you right now, and I want to bring you up here. Will you please welcome Mary Bednarowski?
Thanks, Leslie. I kind of like that mushy stuff. And this presentation is about women. There are a lot of us. You know, it still surprises me, and it gladdens my heart, after all these years, when I recall the speed, the enthusiasm, and the devotion to justice with which United Seminary responded to the claims of the second wave of feminism, that in multiple ways and with endless negative consequences, legal, economic, cultural, religious, political, women were not counted as fully human. We at United beg to differ, and we have put that fervent differing into action. When I arrived in 1976, there was a gender-inclusive language policy long since in place. Lance Barker had already received a grant that made possible a course taught by Gail Graham Yates on women in church and society, among the first in this country in a seminary. The first course I taught, and I think the reason I was hired, including being Gail's friend, there was that, the old girl system, always a good thing, was a course on women in American religious history. And our dean, Tom Campbell, same story, Clyde. Our dean, Tom Campbell, had already written a letter to a congregation in Wisconsin telling them that if they refused, as they threatened, to accept a woman ministry intern, we would not be sending them a non-woman. We had encouraging, unthreatened, at least as I experienced them, male colleagues, and a faculty wives club, this was still the 70s, that was becoming more feminist by the minute. In the 1980s, and in fact there was one in the 1970s, in the 1980s there were women in tenure-track positions on the faculty, and the number of women students was steadily increasing. Scholarship about women was encouraged, and almost all the women on the faculty, who also continued to increase in number, taught courses about women and religion, and wrote books and articles about women in religion in our various fields. In that work, we were and are affirmed, as we say at United Seminary. We are not just encouraged, we are affirmed. We were not deprived of promotion and tenure because of our feminist scholarship, which was the case in a shocking number of other institutions. We felt, in fact, that our male colleagues were proud of us and our work. Our students knew that United was a good place to be as a woman. And our women graduates began to assume leadership in multiple settings. In 1991, Syl Braun, one of our own graduates, gave us a very, very generous gift that funded the Women's Studies program in religion, theology, and ministry. And on the very day that I got the phone message to call Syl, I had been in Wilson's office. Wilson was the dean. We had wanted to start a women's studies program, and I said, do you think, could we possibly come up with maybe $200 for some brochures? And I got back to my desk, and there was that little pink telephone slip like we used to have. Call Syl Braun. Ah. Now, these are a few of the facts. I'd also like to convey a bit of the spirit of our history. Was every moment bliss? Was every effort free of struggle? Of course not. Did we sometimes experience anger and frustration, men and women both? Oh, let me say it again, women and non-women both. Well, sure we did, of course we did. But was there on the whole more joy than pain? Almost always. We arrived one morning to find the balcony of the library court covered with a giant spider web made by students, inspired by the radical theologian Mary Daly's sparking, spooking, and spinning. And the faculty had to pretend to be upset. The burden. We trusted our male colleagues enough to impress them with our let's be lighthearted once in a while outfits. Pink t-shirts and pink baseball caps with lightning bolts. And to sing for them, "We are women, hear us roar." I think we even did a few little dance steps. Who says you can't produce excellent scholarship wearing a pink cap with a lightning bolt? And then there was the first reimagining conference. in Minneapolis in 1993, now frequently cited in textbooks as a significant moment in American women's religious history. Reimagining evolved through the efforts of many, many women. United students, graduates, and faculty were prominent among them and in positions of leadership. We offered this conference on global women's theology as a gift to the church. That's how we experienced it. That was our intent. This is a gift that we offer to the church. Sadly, it was reviled by some as heretical and even blasphemous. And it actually had punitive effects on some women's careers in different parts of the country. At United, we were given the gift of gratitude for our work. The courage and the creativity of women has never, well, hardly ever, been a threat to the deep faith of United, that we are, all of us, fully human, that our voices not only deserve to be heard, but they must be heard if the church in the world are to be whole. It is truly beyond my own imaginings that this will ever change at our beloved little seminary. Thank you.
So we have now both a woman and a non-woman. I can tell you they are both staunch feminists. I've known Kevin Kling since the 80s, and you all know Kevin Kling too, of course. Kevin Kling, renowned storyteller, writer, performer, beloved here in the state of Minnesota. You can hear him on Minnesota Public Radio. You can actually hear him on National Public Radio. He's beloved around the country. He's actually beloved around the world because he has performed all over the place, Australia, everywhere. And he managed to find a compatriot who is just as irresistible as Kevin, in Simone Perrin. And the two of them have been working together over the years. They performed here for a Valentine's Day show. It was a beautiful thing, and we needed them to come back and be with us this evening. And Kevin's got a whole bunch of holiday gigs coming up at Interact, and you've got like three or... The Guthrie's the first Monday, and then Interact is a cabaret that's running actually starting in November and into December, all sorts of nights, and we should have postcards here about that, but we can talk about it later. And Simone, you have stuff coming up, especially in your belly. Yeah, I'm making the baby. Yeah. Congratulations. You going to play banjo to that baby right now? All right. So the two of you are going to perform together? Kinda? Okay, so we should welcome them together, Simone Perrin and Kevin Kling.
Hi there. I need to sit down because I get really I'm playing the accordion next, and I get really out of breath because of this little thing. Boop, boop. So I'm going to sing a song for you that I learned with my husband, John, and we learned it so we could go sing it down at the protest at Government Center. And it was really fun. I sang it with a ukulele. It was a serious ukulele song. And but tonight I'm going to sing it with a banjo because it's a Woody Guthrie song, but it was revived by Pete Seeger in the 60s, and it's unbelievably pertinent now. It's kind of shocking. And that's all. It's called I Ain't Got No Home in This World Anymore. I ain't got no home, I'm just a rambling round. I work when I can get it, I go from town to town. The police make it hard wherever I may go. And I ain't got no home in this world anymore. No, I ain't got no home in this world anymore. My brothers and my sisters are stranded on this road. It's a long and dusty road that 1,000,000 feet have trod. The rich man took my home and drove me from my door. And I ain't got no home in this world anymore. I mined in your mines and I gathered in your corn. I've been working, mister, since the day that I was born. And I worry all the time like I never done before. 'Cause I ain't got no home in this world anymore. No, I ain't got no home in this world anymore. Now as I look around, it's mighty plain to see. This world is such a strange and a funny place to be, where the gambling man is rich while the working man is poor. And I ain't got no home in this world anymore. No, I ain't got no home in this world anymore.
It said history isn't written by those who are right, it's written by those who are left. And also, Protestant starts with protest. There's two things that happened the other day that led me to write what I'm going to say next, and I'll tell you what those two things were. One, I ran into a poem by Rumi that goes like this: before right doing and wrong doing, there is a field, and I will meet you there. The other is I saw a woman, a non-man, get on the bus, and she got on the bus and she was in a wheelchair. And when she spun her wheelchair around, there was a sign on the back that said, "I'm a strong woman. When I get up in the morning, the devil says, oh shoot, she's awake." We live in a world of ambiguity. It's said we live with Stone Age emotions, medieval morals, and a modern technology. No wonder we're such a mess. To navigate our lives, we either need to follow a light or to find solace in the mystery. John O'Donohue says, if we come from clay, what kind of clay do you come from? A craggy cliff or a peaceful meadow? That kind of clay determines our characteristics. He also says that we either have an inner landscape, we have both an inner landscape and an outer landscape. Our inner landscape is how we perceive ourselves. Our outer landscape is how we perceive and are perceived by others. The relationship of these two landscapes has everything to do with how we deal with this ambiguity. The way we bridge the turmoil between the realms leads us to the arts, a life in the clergy, to protest. A need to connect these often conflicting ambiguities determines these landscapes. Now, where does this need to connect come from? I think it comes from somewhere deep. I've got a friend named Ingrid. I work with a lot of folks with disabilities now. And Ingrid has aphasia. That means she has a very hard time getting her thoughts to become words. She almost speaks in poetry when she talks. It was very hard to tell me this, but she said before her aphasia, she always thought, I think, therefore I am. But after her aphasia, now she knows, I am, therefore I think. We come from somewhere deeper than our thoughts. Now, I always wondered, can art actually heal? I've always wondered about that, and finally something happened that I know it can. I suffer from post-traumatic stress. I was in a motorcycle accident 9 years ago, and I had trouble sleeping for a couple of years. Then I started sleeping. It was great. And then about a year ago, I stopped sleeping. The post-traumatic stress came back. So I went to a therapist, and she said, you have to realize it's not time released. She said, that's what we always think, that once the time is over, you're going to be fine. That's not how it works. It'll be released by other methods. You don't even know what's triggering it. She says, what we need to do is walk through the accident again. This time you missed the car. So that's what we did. I formed another story in my inner landscape that had me miss the car. And after that, I started to sleep. It worked like a charm. So I know that the arts can actually help heal. The problem with that is my outer landscape is going, no, that's not what happened. No, that's not what happened. You still have to put your socks on with your feet. You still have to do things that still relate to that accident. So there is the tension once again. There is the ambiguity at work. I know that whereas the arts can help us sleep, they can also help wake us up. A few years ago, I had to go in and I was applying for Social Security because somebody says, you got to get on their list. Get on their list so that if you ever need it one day, you'll be ready. So I went in to get on their list, and they had a form that I had to fill out. And the first question on the form was, what is wrong with you? Now, when I was a kid, I always had my arm was always shorter than the other one. And I never thought I was disabled. I never thought anything was wrong with me. That was just the way I was. It was normal to me. But the other people treated me differently, and I could tell there was something, the way people treated me, that seemed different. So I started to listen to them. I'm going to tell you why I think I'm a storyteller. It's because of my left arm. Because people would come up to me and they'd call my arm withered or crippled or say, you poor thing, or what happened. But by the words they chose, I could tell whether they blamed me, my parents, God, or themselves for my condition. And with that information, I could get what I needed out of them. It's the way a kid works. Rhetoric. I found how important rhetoric was even as a child. Now, Aristotle says there's three kinds of rhetoric. We've got logic, we've got morals, and we've got emotions. And we all think when we do something, we're guided by logic. Second, we always think it's morals. We're guided by our morals. And third, emotions. Well, it's actually the opposite. I mean, when I tell my buddies we're going fishing and I say, well, you know, why are you kissing the minnows? Isn't that superstitious? No, it's logic. We don't want to jinx it. So, yeah, but we are mostly guided by our emotions. That's what really steers us. This thing that lies deep within ourselves. The Greeks also believed that the arts were a gift. They said that the arts had nothing to do with talent, that our talent had nothing to do with something we did. It was from the gods. The gift came from the gods, and to honor the gods, you had to use your gifts. You would anger the gods if you did not use your gifts. One story I remember that I just love is about Zeus when he created people. When we were first created, we had 4 arms, 4 legs, and 2 heads. But we had so much fun, we stopped listening to the gods. And Zeus, in his anger, split us all in 2. So we have 2 arms, 2 legs, and 1 head. But we were always forever looking for our other halves. We're always looking to reconnect. I love what Zeus said after that, though. And if you keep having fun and you don't knock it off, you're going down to 1 leg. So that need to connect, it lives within us. Ben Okri says, artists are shapers and diviners. We use both landscapes. We're the diviners and we're the shapers. We live forever with a foot in 2 worlds. But for me, the arts must be essential to the community or it is absolutely useless in my mind. We try to impress our inner landscapes with others. In other words, we try to protest. We try to force our inner landscapes in the way other people's feel. But they tend to fortify. They tend to stop, and we lay siege upon them. How do we get in? How do we actually really get into other people's landscapes? I think the best way to get in is to be invited. My friend Gio worked at the Department of Transportation, and he found that motorcycle accidents are caused by people who say they just don't see them. And they did a study, and they found that unless you had a family member or a motorcycle yourself, you actually did not see them. And I think that's true with people in need. That if you don't have a person in need in your life, or you're not a person in need, you just don't see them. Or maybe it's like when I open a Mexican jumping bean. Sometimes there's something you just don't want to know. I hear now words like tolerance, and I go crazy. Even compassion has a shelf life to me. But if somebody sees me as a family member, if somebody sees themselves in me, if somebody recognizes me, then my survival becomes their survival, and we're all one. Our stories give us that connection. It's why our stories ask the biggest questions. Where do we come from before life? Where do we go after life? What's funny in this world? What is sacred? And even if we don't find the answers, by the asking and by the telling, we know we're not alone. We know we belong, and the family starts to build. Oftentimes this takes faith, that trust. Are we having an effect as an artist? But we have to have that faith. Faith to me is letting go of one hand in the dark and reaching for the next. And if you've caught enough hands, pretty soon your faith strengthens and you know another hand will be there. That's why meetings like this are so important. That's why places like this are so important. Michael Hollis says, a good life has patience, luck, and grace. Patience and luck, you can figure those, but grace. Grace isn't a touch with the divine necessarily. It's the divine in the everyday, the divine in the things that make up our lives. We are shapers and we are diviners. As Rabbi Heschel says, don't pray to receive, pray to be worthy to receive. We connect somewhere deeper, and that place, like Ingrid says, is before thought. That place is before wrongdoing, before right doing. And there is a field, and I will meet you there.
Do you have it?
Yeah, go.
Oh, good. Kev has his harmonica. So this song is called "Oh Mary, Don't You Weep," and it's a spiritual that dates back to before the Civil War, and it had a resurgence in the civil rights movement. And James Baldwin wrote a book of essays called, it's called "The Fire Next Time," and there's one of the last lines that says, "God gave Noah the rainbow sign, no more water, but fire next time." And it became one of the quintessential books on race relations. And it's just a really fun song, and you can sing along, and I know you all are very good at that, I've heard. And I'll repeat it's very easy to sing along. You'll get it. And I'll play it a lot. We'll sing it a lot. It'll be really good. And it just had, the song has coded messages throughout of hope and resistance. And Here we go. If I could, I surely would stand on the rock where Moses stood. Pharaoh's army got drowned. Oh, Mary, don't you weep. Oh, Mary, don't you weep, don't you mourn. Oh, Mary, don't you weep, don't you mourn. Pharaoh's army got drowned. Oh, Mary, don't you weep. Now Mary wore 3 links of chain. Every link was freedom's name. Pharaoh's army got drowned. Oh, Mary, don't you weep. Oh, Mary, don't you weep, don't you mourn. Oh, Mary, don't you weep, don't you mourn. Pharaoh's army got drowned. Oh, Mary, don't you weep. Oh, one of these days about 12 o'clock, this old world's gonna reel and rock. Pharaoh's army got drowned. Oh, Mary, don't you weep. Oh, Mary, don't you weep, don't you mourn. Oh, Mary, don't you weep, don't you mourn. Pharaoh's army got drowned. Oh, Mary, don't you weep. Well, Moses stood on the Red Sea shore, smote the water with a 2x4. Pharaoh's army got drowned. Oh, Mary, don't you weep. Oh, Mary, don't you weep, don't you mourn. Oh, Mary, don't you weep, don't you mourn. Pharaoh's army got drowned. Oh, Mary, don't you weep. Well, God gave Noah the rainbow sign. No more water, but fire next time. Pharaoh's army got drowned. Oh, Mary, don't you weep. Oh, Mary, don't you weep, don't you mourn. Oh, Mary, don't you weep, don't you mourn. Pharaoh's army got drowned. Oh, Mary, don't you weep. One more time, because it feels so good. Oh, Mary, don't you weep, don't you mourn. Oh, Mary, don't you weep, don't you mourn. Pharaoh's army got drowned. Oh, Mary, don't you weep. Oh, Mary, don't you weep, don't you mourn. Oh, Mary, don't you weep, don't you mourn. Pharaoh's army got drowned. Oh, Mary, don't you weep. Thank you.
So you have lyric sheets on your chairs. Words by Lloyd Stone. You know the melody. It is Finlandia. Lloyd Stone wrote this poem after the First World War, when it was called the Great War, in hopes that we would learn. Why don't we rise as we're able and sing together? This is my song, O God of all the nations, a song of peace for lands of far and mine. This is my home, the country where my heart is. Here are my hopes, my dreams, my holy shrine. But all the hearts in other lands are beating with hopes and dreams as true and high as mine. My country's skies are bluer than the ocean, and sunlight beams on clover leaf and pine. But all the lands have sunlight too, and clover, and skies are everywhere as blue as mine. Oh, hear my song, oh God of all the nations, a song of peace for their land and for mine. Let's loop that last line. A song of peace for their land and for mine. Will you please stay standing for just a moment? We want to thank Adam so much, our tech director. Rini, the head of box office. Gretchen, the glue that holds it all together. And our fearless leader, Cindy Beth Johnson. Thank you so much for making this happen. Thank you to all these generous artists, our wonderful readers. Thank you so much, and all of you for coming out. Denise, will all of you come on up? We all need to sing We Shall Overcome, don't you think, before we head out of here? Denise, you should lead us. Pamela, Musa, come on up. Lead us in We Shall Overcome.
Well, we have overcome so much, but yet we know there's much work to do. And so we sing this song with that in mind. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. We are not afraid. We are not afraid. We are not afraid. We are not afraid today. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we are not afraid today. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand.
the fire and the storm. We'll walk hand in hand today, right now, today. Deep in my heart, deep in my heart. We got to believe, people. I do believe we'll walk hand in hand today. Love is in our hearts. Love is in our hearts. Love is in our hearts. Love is in our tonight. Tonight. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe love is in our hearts. Love is in our hearts tonight. Tonight. You need some water? Yeah, all right, let me get some.